Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Pro Football Focus Fantasy Slant podcast. I am Michael Moore. With me tonight is Joey Cardelano. How are you tonight, Joey?
Good, Mike. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm digesting the Andre Brown news, but we'll get to that a little later. First, couple things. Just want to remind folks that tonight's podcast is brought to you by DraftKings. A lot of cool stuff you can do on that. They got the app, and for real fantasy nuts, I think that's probably the way to go. So, and don't forget also the Pro Football Focus Fantasy Guide, which they just had the August update out about a week and a half ago. So be sure to download that. And without further ado, Joey, I think we'll jump right in. So tonight, I think we're going to cover a couple of the training camp battles. It's week one of the preseason, so things are starting to shake out a little bit. So let's start with the most popular one, and the Browns quarterback. I guess you could call it controversy. I mean, I think we all know where it's going, but what's your assessment of sort of where it's at right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say he lived up to the hype because the hype is exponential, but you can't help but like what you saw from Johnny Manziel in Detroit in the first week of the preseason. He showed his trademark escapability. He ran for 26 or 27 yards on roughly a third of the team's snaps. So, I mean, project that out. That's roughly 60, 70 yards in a game. It's statistically proven that guys who can put up yards on the ground have an inherent statistical advantage on a week-to-week basis. I'm not sold on him as a franchise NFL quarterback. He may never be a franchise quarterback for Cleveland, but I've seen enough already from college and just his skills translating in week one to make me believe that he's going to be valuable in fantasy for a long time, as long as he's on the field.
Right. Yeah. I don't think I think it's kind of silly. It's kind of silly now to think, oh, there was a real controversy with Hoyer and Manziel, but yeah, it's not like, and look, Hoyer is what he is. He's a journeyman quarterback. He's not anything special. I mean, I
feel bad for the guy, but he's just running into a freight train.
Right, and look, his death warrant was signed as soon as they traded back up to get Manziel. So, look, I think he knows what's going on. I mean, he just doesn't have that much talent above Manziel right now, at least, to I think make his case that he should stick around as a starter. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be very long anymore. The question is just how high does Manziel go? And I don't know of anyone I think that's calling him the next, like Luck or RG3 as far as dynasty prospects go. But yeah, I agree with you. I think he's probably going to be a QB1 probably at his peak. Again, if he can avoid the hit and not get his bell rung. So.
Right. He's one of those guys that he's going to produce when he's on the field. It's just the question is how long is he going to be on the field?
Right. And I think, one of the positives for me from him was it seemed like he knew sort of when to put his head down and when to take himself out of it. He didn't.
Yeah, he went head first on one, but then he followed it up with a very technically sound slide out.
Right. So I think that first one probably refreshed his memory. Like, holy crap! No, this is the NFL now. It's not Southeast Louisiana. So so I think we're pretty good there. And dynasty, perspective, I think that's a no-brainer too. I think Manziel long term. And quite honestly, just the last note on Hoyer, I don't know that he signs on anywhere else after this year. Do you? At least to start anyway, I should say.
Yeah, I think all his morale might be taken away after this.
Right.
Right. Manziel's definitely, just speaking of which, while we're on the subject, he's going as 23 overall in terms of rookies, early third rounder, late second. He's well worth the price there.
Yeah, that kind of surprises me, actually. I would have thought, you're getting a starter. And I guess that's a testament to just how loaded this rookie draft class is, which is extremely loaded. I was kind of surprised, actually. So, All right, so we'll move on to something with a little more competition, and that is the Patriots receiver battle. And you, Joey, I think, are the Patriot expert between the two of us, so feel free to chime in if I'm speaking out of turn. But it seems like there's sort of dual battles going on, right? Like you've got the battle for the inside spot between Edelman and Amendola, and then pretty much it's a free-for-all for the outside spot, and pretty much whoever takes it has it. Is that about right?
Yeah, roughly. I see. I don't view Amendola and Edelman competing with each other that much right now, given the state of their receiving corps, because they can both play inside or out. and they have the ability to be on the field at the same time. I think that you would have saw that last year if Amendola was healthy. The question is, the key to it all is Aaron Dobson. This guy had surgery in March. He had a screw put in his foot. Come to find out, reports all offseason were that he was going to be fine. He practiced literally for the first time today.
Right.
Other than Brandon LaFell, who I'm sure he'll have a nice 400 or 500-yard season with Brady, but I mean, Dobson is their only real number one receiver on the outside who can play deep and take the top off defenses. I think it all flows from him. If he's not out there, you're looking at Edelman and Amendola both getting theirs, I think.
So, Edelman really took advantage last year. I mean, he had some crazy amount of targets. I want to say like 140 or something around there. Yeah. How much of a drop-off with, let's presume, and this is a big assumption, that Amendola stays healthy, and even more wishful thinking is Gronkowski stays healthy. Yeah. How much of a hit does Edelman take on his targets this year if those two guys play most, if not all, the year?
I think you're going to see a hit in the targets for sure. I mean, when you have more mouths to feed with Gronkowski and Amendola and Dobson being healthy. Dobson wasn't healthy last year either. You're going to lose targets, but I think Edelman has the ability to change that turn that into increased efficiency. So I think he'll be hurt overall, but I don't think it's going to be as drastic as some people think. Because a lot of those targets last year were 5 yards from the line of scrimmage, whereas he'll probably be getting some
if more that, yeah. So what number receiver on your team would you be comfortable with an Edelman there? I mean, he's not a wide receiver one, that's obvious. No. But where would you start? Where would you be comfortable with him on your team, on your Dynasty team, I should say?
Dynasty, I wouldn't be comfortable with him as more than anything as a wide receiver 3. If you're talking full PPR, I can see stretching it as your wide receiver 2 some weeks. But, I mean, if you're talking Dynasty long-term between Brady's age and his lack of elite athleticism, I don't think you can be comfortable with him as anything more than a 3.
So maybe a sell high on Edelman about now.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that, as much as it pains me to say that, because I pretty much rode Edelman to a couple playoffs last year. But, yeah, that whole offense is all situation. Unless you're Gronkowski and you're just guaranteed the looks, yeah, it's all about, I guess, what Brady's feeling that day or who's open or who he trusts in that particular drive, I think.
And that's the thing with Dobson, too. You're right about everything being dictated off of Gronk, but that's because Gronk brings something that no one else on the team does, and Dobson does as well. So if he's healthy, I really like Dobson.
Yeah, I think he's an underrated guy. And there really, quite honestly, is no one else there that comes even close, I think, to taking that spot. I mean, you had a couple guys last year, like Tompkins especially, who people thought, oh, he's really coming on strong. But in the end, yeah, I think it was probably Dobson's job to lose there.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on, and something you had brought up, which is also an interesting case, is the Bills running back competition. And I again, correct me if this wasn't the angle, but for this year, I think it's fairly set on the pecking order and all that. But beyond this year, I think it's anything but settled. Is that about right?
Yeah. C.J. Spiller's older than most people realize. We're still waiting for that breakout. He's 26. I think he absolutely has the talent to be a breakout. But they just re-upped Fred Jackson, who is the bane of C.J. Spiller's fantasy existence. I don't care how old he is. And they signed Bryce Brown in the offseason, or they traded for Bryce Brown rather. And we saw how naturally talented Brown was in Philly. He's looked good in preseason. They've had 2 games, and he has 18 carries for 104 yards, which is almost 6 a carry. If Spiller falters, they have the talent behind him that can afford to have a short leash on him. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what that carry distribution is like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if a more frustrating running back or team or whatever. I mean, every year you hear the same thing. No, it's going to go through Spiller. We're going to pound it with Spiller. And then
he throws up.
Yeah, until he throws. Yeah, those infamous words. And then he doesn't, and he's perfectly fine because he's not running enough. So, yeah, I think the Bills probably, for this entire time, for whatever reason, didn't like what they saw. They traded for Brown, like you said. They gave up a 4th rounder, which, it's not chicken feed. It's not like a conditional 7th if the guy makes the team. That's a pretty that's a pretty big investment, especially for a running back. And
Right.
with Spiller entering a contract year and Fred Jackson with his wheels, apparently ready to fall off at any point. I mean, guy's like 36 years old by now or something. Yeah,
Yep.
I could see.
Jackson's getting those goal line carries though.
Right. Believe me, he's going out swinging. So, I think Brown is a highly capable handcuff in redraft leagues, and for Dynasty, I think he's right up there as far as top backups go in all of the NFL.
Absolutely, and I just did a quick search. It looks like he's going 142 overall in terms of Dynasty startups around guys like Darren McFadden and Niall Davis. I would absolutely rather have Bryce Brown than those guys.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if people don't know him or don't value his situation, I think they need to, because unless Spiller finally does have that breakout, it's not going to happen. I can't imagine them re-signing him, and certainly not for. Look, it's sort of that double-edged sword. If he has a breakout season, great. I doubt they're going to give him a boatload of money. And likewise, if he doesn't have a great season, they could also go, great, see you later. We got Bryce Brown, and we'll move on. So, yeah, I think the stars are aligning for Brown there. And then, so finally, some late-breaking news. We switched to the Texans running back situation, which with Arian Foster at the top of that depth chart is always pretty volatile. But just literally minutes ago, the news came out that Andre Brown, who everyone presumed was the backup there, at least this year, was cut. So now that leaves Jonathan Grimes and Alfred Blue to battle it out for that backup position. And another, quite honestly, highly coveted situation where the top guy is anything but certain to finish the season. So, Joey, first, sort of let's dive into these guys, and then who would you rather have?
Well, Foster, if you weren't selling him in Dynasty before, first of all, if you weren't selling him in Dynasty before, you better be trying to sell him now to some poor league mate who hasn't checked Roto-World in the last 24 hours.
Right.
I think if you're gonna own someone, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like Grimes is the guy to own, just based on the fact that he's next in the pecking order. But I mean, man, the future running back for the Texans is not on this roster.
Right.
They worked out Ronnie Brown and Brian Leonard today.
A sad state of affairs, Joey.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd really be wasting any Dynasty assets on these guys. I don't even know if a roster spot, unless you're in a really, really deep league, even if you have Foster. I mean, I think Bill O'Brien's going to be passing the ball a lot, despite the fact that he doesn't have a quarterback. That's his nature, though. He's got two dominant wide receivers. Yeah, I just would stay away unless you can get Foster on the cheap. I mean, Foster's going to have some games. If you can get Foster really, really cheap, I might. But, man, I would stay away otherwise.
Yeah, it just has the makings of just a train wreck this year. Because, yeah, look, best case scenario is Foster stays healthy. But, it's for Dynasty perspective, how long does that last? It's just really a shame because, look, when he was on top of his game, he was the best. I mean, by far. But, his injury history coupled with the fact that, hey, you took him out of the offense that produced all those numbers, quite honestly. And, look, Bill O'Brien's, I think, a very good offensive coach, but he's not going to rely on Foster, I think, quite like a guy like Kubiak did. So, yeah, I'm with you. If you can get something for Foster, I mean, look, I don't know of anyone that would roll with him as your top running back in Dynasty. And even running back 2, I think you're pushing your luck with the injury history there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, a lot of things happening. And look, it's 1 week of preseason. We've got a couple more games, but I'm sure a lot of these situations will shake itself out by the next couple weeks. So I think we're going to switch gears a little bit, Joey. I think, you and I both are pretty Dynasty heavy for Pro Football Focus. So I think we're going to look at a couple guys tonight, sort of like a Dynasty stock watch, and look at some guys' ADP, some high-ranking guys, but sort of determine, is that the right spot for them? Would we maybe go higher, maybe go lower, and just, get some general thoughts? Because I think look, there's going to be a lot of drafts coming up for people, and now's the time if you're going to be trading for picks or trading for young guys. You're going to need to know who you need to hold and pretty much who you need to let go. So without further ado, we'll just go down the offensive positional list. We'll do quarterback first, and a guy that we'll get into this a little bit. I think he's been underrated with his past performance, but I think it might be time to finally face reality, and that's Cam Newton. So, look, he's going third as far as dynasty quarterbacks go in ADP, 50 overall. Are you buying or selling Cam Newton, Joey?
I think that's about right for him. After Rodgers and Luck, I think it's pretty clear that Newton and Stafford are in a tier of their own. Yeah, 50 overall. I probably, in terms of quarterback ranking, I like 50 overall. I could probably wait a little longer on him there, just because of the other options that are available.
Right. Yeah, and I don't want to call last year a fluke necessarily, because look, I mean, Carolina was a good team, but I just wonder if they're going to be able to do it again this year. I mean, look, they did draft Kelvin Benjamin, who I think, at least the early reports indicate he's a huge upgrade over what they had last year. Huge.
Not saying much.
Well, yeah, that's the second part of that statement. But with the exception of that, I mean, given they did lose some guys on the offensive line, Jordan Gross primarily, but it's pretty much the same personnel. I just question if they can do it again, and that's not to take anything away from Newton, but I just wonder if they can replicate that. And third quarterback, if you're talking dynasty, you got to take age into account, obviously. I don't know, man. I may view him a little lower. I mean, I agree with you. I think he's definitely up there, but I probably would take a guy like Stafford above Newton. I just think he's got a lot more weapons, and for sure that's what they're doing. But yeah, I would
agree with Stafford just because of the nature of how they score their points. Stafford's much more predictable as far as getting points with his arm, whereas Newton, you have no idea what you're getting week to week. He could go for 40 or 15.
Right, and he could run for 80 yards or he can run for none, just depending on what happens. So, okay, so I think we agree that's probably about the same spot, or about the right spot for him. Next, we go to a pretty polarizing guy, RG3, the 8th quarterback in Dynasty ADP and 74th overall. So, there's been some reports, Joey, and I don't know how much stock you put into them about, and it seems like this happens every year. There's always that Kirk Cousins crescendo coming up oh, it's just a tidal wave of support for Cousins and they made the wrong choice and blah blah blah. But what's RG3's value for you? Is that about right? 8th quarterback in Dynasty?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think he's a nice little upside play outside of that safe top 4 to 6 quarterbacks. I really like this guy. I think he got a bad shake in his second year with the Shanahan's. He's got a ton of weapons now between Jackson, Jordan Reed coming back healthy, hopefully, knock on wood. Again, like Newton, though, I might wait a little past 74 overall. But in terms of quarterbacks, I mean, if you're waiting to the back of the top 10 to pick your quarterback and you end up with RG3 in Dynasty, given his age and potential, I'd be more than happy with that.
Yeah, he scares me, man.
I love them coming out of Baylor. He's one of my biggies.
No, and look, I think you hit it. I think you hit the nail on the head. When you get to this point of quarterbacks, meaning past that sort of certain top tier 5-6 guys, right. I mean, you got to look at upside. You got to see, okay, what's the ceiling on this guy, right?
Who would you take over him, for instance?
I would take a guy like Foles, I think. I'd take Foles over RG3. Looking down the list, man, I would take Matt Ryan. Although, that depends on, are we including Matt Ryan in sort of that upper tier, or is he sort of in the same tier as RG3?
I would include Ryan in that, right at the top of that tier that RG3 is in. I would definitely take Ryan over him, but let's get to a more borderline guy. Let's say RG3 or Andy Dalton.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
You would ask.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I got to.
God. Well, okay. If that's for that specific example.
Well, that's the range you're talking about, back in.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's kind of funny because with Dalton, and people may be surprised, he's actually improved every single year statistically. But you've got Hugh Jackson coming in there, and I think he probably is topped out. So, yeah. But yeah, I think you make a good point though. It's about upside in that group right there. And I agree. Griffin's got all the upside in the world. He really does. But for me, I'm one of those more conservative dynasty guys that I I would love it if he were healthier. And given the ACL thing and rushing him back was not his fault. I'm not blaming him, but it is what it is, and now he's got that for him for life. So.
Right, and to your point, Gruden has said that they are going to have less designed runs for him, not only to protect his knee, but because that's just Gruden's offense. So.
Right. And look, he's got a cannon of an arm. It's not like he can't get it done with his arm. It's just, if he can stay healthy and if he can get it to the right guys. So,
yeah.
All right, so moving on, we got some running backs. I tried to get the most polarizing guy, Joey, if you couldn't tell. So, first up, we got Doug Martin. 8th running back, 23rd overall. Missed a lot of time last year. It's kind of like RG3. He had an awesome rookie year, set the world on fire, and then went very high in drafts last year and got hurt. It just was never the same last year. So, what's your feeling on Martin at 8th as far as running backs go?
I'm kind of mixed. I would lean towards that. That's a good value. I loved Martin coming out. He had a great rookie year, as you mentioned, even if the production was concentrated to 2 or 3 games. But he had a great year. The injury he suffered was a shoulder, if I'm not mistaken, correct? He suffered a separated shoulder?
I think he had that and a labrum maybe. And he had a lot of stuff.
Point being, it wasn't anywhere near his lower body, so it's not like he's rehabbing and he's lost reps and he's going to lose his explosion. So I'm not worried about there. My biggest concern with Martin going forward would be Lovie Smith and his track record on offense, or lack thereof. They drafted Charles Sims, who's a really, really good pass-catching back, so I think that caps Martin's upside a little. But, I mean, if you're talking about back end of the RB1s, I think that's a fine area for Martin.
Yeah, it would be like my last running back probably if he's going to be my running back 1. I mean, I'd have to wait for a while on that. The thing with Martin is it's the guys they drafted, I think, that concern me more, right? Like
Sims is really good catching the ball.
Right, which, if that's their plan, I think it's a great plan. I think they executed it perfectly. I mean, they drafted Evans with the 7th overall pick in a pretty loaded draft. I mean, that to me, that says something. Then they use a 2nd rounder on Safarian Jenkins when you could argue they had a decent guy in Tim Wright, or at least someone that could hold him over a year. So, and then like you said, they drafted
2 tight ends.
Well, depending on where he ends up. But
I think they might use Wright as the move guy, whereas they put Safarian Jenkins in line.
Right. Yeah. But even that says to me that they're looking to throw the ball, and like you alluded to with Sims too. It's just that's the part that concerns me, because his value as a rookie came because he was a high volume guy. I mean, he made a lot of big plays too, but I mean, he was pretty much it in that offense that year. And if this is the route they're going, I think it's a good plan. I just don't think Martin's going to be relied on as heavily. So, he's squarely back into the first, maybe even early, a top running back 2 for me as far as Dynasty goes. And I think that 23rd overall is probably crazy. Is that right? Am I crazy, or is that?
Yeah, I agree. Just because I lean wide receivers in Dynasty, so that's definitely a little high overall for me. But while we're on the subject, let's take a look at guys going around Martin. So you got Murray going after him. I would definitely take Murray over him.
Yeah, I would too.
Monte Ball. See, that's right. That Monte Ball, Ellington, Zach Stacy range, that's where I would take Martin.
Okay.
So that's where you're talking 10 or 11. So would you take those guys over Martin?
I would take Ball, I think, over Martin. Yeah.
Ellington scares me. Like, I could see him having a monster workload for 3 or 4 weeks and then just breaking down.
Right. Well, and see, for Dynasty purposes, it's, I like him because I think Bruce Arians finally woke up and goes, holy crap, we really don't have any other options in the running game here.
Yeah.
But he's also 25. Like, that's what people don't realize. He was a late bloomer. It's not like he's a Le'Veon Bell, like, hey, I just turned 21 and am able to drink now. It's like, hey, he's 25 and can rent a car. Like, he's up there. And for running backs, look, we all know the tried and true number, which is 27, 28 years old is peak. So if you're looking at Ellington, you got maybe tops 3 years. So, I would probably take Martin over Ellington. Oh, man, Stacy.
You got Stacy, Sankey, Lynch, Foster, Spiller.
Yeah, and I would probably, at this point, I'd probably take Sankey over Martin. I think
I
I
can see
would.
that.
Yeah, I think I would. Stacy, that's a close call for me. I personally like Stacy, even though I know, look, I know the rub against him, right? Low yards per carry. He was a volume guy last year. They drafted Trey Mason. Believe me, there's a lot to go. There's a lot to go against him. But I don't know. I think a guy like Jeff Fisher, once he has a guy, he sticks with it and just runs him into the ground. So,
Yep.
look, I think with Martin, if he were the back end of running back ones, like you said, I think I'd be okay with that. But that's presuming I've got like my receivers on lockdown, maybe an elite tight end, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's true. There's kind of a drop, so if you're looking at the overall ADP in terms of just running back, so you have Martin, Murray, and Ball going from 22 to 25, and then you have a drop from Ellington, Stacy, and Sankey going from 35 to 41. So it seems like the Dynasty community has him at the end of a tier right there. So
Right, which for me, I would wait on Martin for that second tier, quite honestly. I think
I
there's
would
probably
too.
stuff. I think there's probably stuff right behind them that I would value more. So
Yeah, I would definitely take Murray and Ball over him. So, all right, sorry to get us distracted. Just trying to play double.
This is good. Okay, next, I think we're going to agree on this one. It's just the level of agreement we have. So I put Trent Richardson on here, which yeah, we need to figure this out. Okay, so he's got a 19th running back ADP, which I don't get at all. But I don't know if that's because that's what sort of the Dynasty community is sort of saying, so that's just what people are going on, or what. But I don't know what else he has to do for people to go, holy crap, like that is not my guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't look if I'm in a 2 running back league. There's no way I'm starting him. There's no way.
No, it's just so disappointing. There was a time 2 years ago, and we're in my home league. I offered 4 first-rounders for Trent Richardson.
Holy!
Thank God the guy was.
They didn't take it, right? They didn't take it.
No, I mean this was when he hadn't played it down in the NFL.
All right.
Right. And the hype train was out of control. But anyway, I mean, yeah, you take a look at the ADP. He's going ahead of guys like Hyde. Like Hyde is criminally underrated at 20 overall. Looking at this. We talked about that last month, actually. He's going behind Gerhardt, which sounds crazy, but, I mean, I'm booking 2 to 3 years of serviceable running back 2 fantasy production for Gerhardt as a floor.
I would take Gerhardt over him all day. All day.
Then you get to Hill, Reggie Bush, Ryan Matthews. I mean, I'd definitely take Joique Bell over him. So we're already in the low 20s for guys for Richardson, what he really should be. So
I just don't understand what else people need to see to know he's not it. Yeah. He's not it. I mean, and nothing in that first preseason game showed otherwise. So, look, if people are listening to this, get rid of him, please. Yeah. Like, don't start him.
And I know people will say, "Oh, it's just preseason," but the running back position, you can tell a lot on the running.
No, that's decided in the preseason.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, you've got guys like Alfred Morris who won his job in preseason.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I don't get it. I just hope people finally cut bait on him. Look, if he's a reserve for you, at least initially, that's fine. Because look, he's gonna start. They're not gonna throw in the towel on him just yet. But look, if you're looking for long term with him, I think you need to get out now. I don't get it. But anyway. All right, so now, Joey, we move to receivers, and your turn to tee off on a guy, and that would be Mr. Cordarrelle Patterson, who is currently going off as the 11th ranked receiver at ADP and 17th overall. Holy crap! So, Joey, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So this is kind of a biggie of mine. I literally wrote an article in January called "Dynasty Debate: Cordarrelle Patterson versus DeAndre Hopkins." Which obviously sparked a little fire on the part of Patterson lovers, given that his high-profile rookie season. So it kind of gets to me when people say that, oh, okay, Norv Turner is going to Minnesota, and Cordarrelle Patterson is just automatically going to step into that Michael Irvin Hall of Famer, Vincent Jackson, Josh Gordon vertical role, when the guy hasn't proven in the least that he can catch the ball downfield. Courtesy of Mike Clay, Pro Football Focus here, he had an 8.5 yards average depth per target. For comparison's sake, DeAndre Hopkins had 14.2 in his rookie year. It just shows that they were manufacturing easy targets for him. So in the 7 games that Adrian Peterson was hurt, after Adrian Peterson was hurt, his ADOT jumped from 7.9 to 8.9, and his catch percentage dropped 10% to 58. It shows that even just a yard more on his average depth of target, he struggled to catch the ball. You just watch the guy. All of his big plays were manufactured near the line of scrimmage. He's not making any plays downfield. And these people are just coming in assuming he's going to be Josh Gordon under Norv Turner, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Literally 99% of his rushing production, which you're going to be banking on if you're drafting him that high, came after Peterson got hurt. Before Peterson got hurt, he had 2 attempts for 2 yards. And after Peterson got hurt, he had 10 attempts for 156 yards and 3 touchdowns. If you think he's going to get 3 touchdowns for every 10 attempts for the rest of his career, you're out of your mind. It just kills me. So yeah, that's my rant.
So you're not taking him 17th overall, and
no, and that's the thing. Like I'm fine with him as like a back end wide receiver 2, really high end wide receiver 3, but people are drafting him to be their future wide receiver 1, and it's just stupid.
Right. Yeah. No, I would agree with that. And I think to me it's also because the position is just so loaded to me. It seems.
Yeah.
I mean. You've got an elite.
Less risk you can take in that range. You could take Brandon Marshall. Like, oh my God, it's anyone.
Right. anyone. Yeah. There's just a lot of guys I think at receiver that are going to be a lot more reliable. I think in that 11th receiver, you're squarely looking at guys like probably Antonio Brown, who I think he's criminally underrated. I mean, I had him on some teams last year, and in PPR leagues, I mean, look, he was like the 3rd-ranked receiver last year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fact, Yeah,
so I've been scooping him up in MFL 10s in the 2nd round. I literally have 4 MFL 10 teams, and he's been my 2nd-round pick in all 3 of them. It's full PPR.
Yeah. So guys like that, I think, are way above him. I would even say probably the top 2 rookies this year. Would you take above him, Watkins and Evans?
Definitely Watkins and probably Evans, yeah.
So
yeah, I probably would, yeah.
Yeah. What about a guy like Cooks?
Oh, that's tough.
Because Cooks, you're getting production. It's just a matter of how much.
I know. Oh, man.
I mean, Cooks to me is a high floor guy, but he's also a low ceiling guy,
Well, I have to disagree that Cooks is low ceiling. Well, I guess maybe low ceiling because of the offense that he's in, like just the sheer amount of mouths that need to be fed.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. He's never going to be a Josh Gordon type where he's it and he's going off for 1,600 yards.
Right.
I think he could get 1,000 yards like clockwork, but it's going to be 1,000, 1,100 kind of season.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? A gun to my head, I think I would take Cooks over Patterson. I really would.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy. Like you said, it's all I think potential at this point, and it just depends on how much you think he has. So, all right. So going to a former Vikings receiver who I think they probably put in the same role, or actually, I think technically he was traded for this guy. I think the draft pick they got for Harvin was used on Patterson, but we'll go to Percy Harvin, receiver from Seattle. 16th receiver, 31 overall ADP. Where are you taking him, Joey?
Lower than that. That's for sure. I mean,
and is it the injury or is it just the nature of the offense?
It's both. I mean, we haven't seen the guy consistently on the field for years now. The nature of the offense is run heavy, and kind of along the same lines as Patterson, like you're banking on rushing a little when Seattle is just absolutely stocked at the running back position. Like in Minnesota, despite the fact that Peterson was there, Harvin was getting goal line carries. With Michael and Lynch, I do not see Harvin getting any goal line carries in Seattle. I can see him having some huge, massive games, but I mean, you can definitely find some more consistency as your wide receiver too, which he's going as.
Yeah. So, what are some of the guys in that sort of mid-teen range that people can look at? I'd imagine a guy like Jordy Nelson's probably still there.
Yeah, if his hammy holds up.
Well, yeah. Hey, he just got re-signed, so they better.
No, I know. I mean, I'm looking at it here. Cooks, I would take Cooks.
Yeah, I would take Cooks.
Hopkins, I'm absolutely taking Hopkins. Talk about guys like Victor Cruz, Pierre Garcon. I might gamble on Harvin's upside there, but I think I would say I'd take Jordy, Mike Evans, Sammy Watkins safely ahead of him.
Yeah, I think, quite honestly, although I think I'd take all those guys you mentioned above him, Cruz and Garcon. I mean, assuming we're in a PPR league, but
Yeah, if it's full PPR, Cruz and Garcon for sure.
yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, Harvin's there's just no consistency there as far as production goes. Like you said, he could go off for 200 total yards a game, or he could have like 40. And look, Seattle doesn't care. It's not like they need Percy Harvin to win games, as evidenced last year. They used him for one game and one game only, and that was the Super Bowl. So, and look, it's not even like they needed him for that game either.
No.
So, yeah, it's just too many peaks and valleys with a guy like Harvin for me.
Definitely.
You know, so, and I think that 31st overall is definitely probably high. I got to imagine there's a lot of guys you could probably take in front of him that I would be okay with. I mean, I'm talking tight ends, wide receiver twos. I would probably be okay with before Harvin there.
Definitely.
So, all right. So next we'll go to tight ends for the couple guys. A guy you wanted to bring up, Julius Thomas. So he's the third-ranked tight end, ADP-wise, Dynasty leagues. Which, you know, I think we're probably in agreement. I don't know of any other tight ends that would unseat him from that. But 30th overall ADP, that's where he sort of falls off for you. So where are you looking for him? I'm assuming you're selling from that spot.
From 30 overall, I'm absolutely selling. I like you said, he's the clear. Him and Jordan Cameron, I think, are in a tier of their own. And Thomas is probably in a tier of his own at 3, and then you got Cameron behind him. I just think you're going to see touchdown regression with this guy. This is a guy who didn't have a single career touchdown coming into last year. Last year was his third year. People forget he had 2 injury-riddled seasons before it, and he had 12 touchdowns. It's not like he's Gronk or Graham where you can bank on him getting 80 catches and 1,000 yards. The guy in what probably will amount to his career season, I can't imagine him doing any better than he did, had 65 grabs for under 800 yards. I just see regression coming for him. And at 30 overall, I think you can get guys who have much longer-term upside. I mean, what are we giving Manning? 2 more years? And what is he without Manning?
Yeah, two to three. 3 is the absolute tops, I think.
Yeah, and what is he without Manning?
Right. No, I agree. I think, yeah, I mean, you bring up a lot of good points. Touchdowns are just, I mean, of all the receiving stats, is by far the most random, right? Like, you can't bank on a consistent touchdown number unless you're truly just elite guy. And even then, guys fall off with that. So you got that going against him. He's not, as far as physical gifts, he's not in the Jimmy Graham, Gronkowski level. He's just not. I mean, look, he's very good, and he's got what it takes to be very successful. But, yeah, he's not a guy where, you know, he could go to any team in the league and go, okay, we're going to run the offense through them. You get that with Graham. You get that with Gronkowski. You don't get that with Thomas. And look, they brought in some guys I think that, you know, are probably going to grab some targets away. I mean, they obviously brought in Sanders to sort of offset Decker. But look, they drafted Cody Latimer too, who I think they're going to try to get him on the field as well. So, yeah, I'm with you there. I think 30th overall, you know, a lot of it obviously depends on how your draft's going and what you're building your team through. But, yeah, I got to believe there's some running backs and receivers you could probably go with that, yeah, like you said, would be around a lot longer. And, look, it's not like there's a dearth of tight ends there. There's a lot of good tight ends out there that you can get at pretty good values. I mean, guys like Kelsey, I think, is a great value. Guys like Ertz are still going to be, you know, that lower kind of that lower single-digit number. So, yeah.
I'm all over Ertz and Green this year. Dynasty, redraft, everything. Zach Ertz, Ladarius Green, get them on your teams.
Oh, yeah. No, and I think you could even argue look, I think this year, you know, you could clearly say Thomas is ahead of those two guys, but for Dynasty purposes, it wouldn't be crazy to take a guy like Ertz, I think, over Thomas. I don't think it would.
No, not at all.
Because I think, you know, they're set up, Philadelphia, for more long-term success than probably Denver. So.
Yeah.
All right, so another guy, sort of in that Ertz, Kelsey maybe range, is Tyler Eifert from Cincinnati. the 10th tight end according to ADP, and 96 overall. Drafted I think very highly last year, but I think it was a combination of it just wasn't a deep draft overall, quite honestly,
Right.
for a skill position anyway. And then, look, he still was split in time. It's still not. It's still like he's not the man there tight end wise yet. They still got Gresham around. So,
Right.
but what I mean is 10th about right, or could you get away with a couple other guys ahead of him?
I think it's a little high. On top of everything you mentioned, you got Hugh Jackson coming in. He's turning this offense into a run-heavy offense. Absolutely.
Right.
He's looking for the two-headed hammer with Hill and Bernard. 10 overall, you got guys like Safarian Jenkins.
Who I would probably take, quite honestly, over a guy like Eifert.
I mean, for those, I don't know if everyone is aware of Jenkins, but go and watch his tape at Washington. If it wasn't, he still got taken in the second round despite all these character and off-field concerns. If you're looking at just his on-field performance, his only real comparable is Gronk. FYI. Kyle Rudolph, I'd probably go with Rudolph over him in Norv Turner's offense.
Yeah. I definitely would.
And I don't even like Kyle Rudolph that much. But I mean,
well, and there's no other tight end option there to take that position away. Rudolph is it.
Right. And I think it's all Andy Dalton can do to get AJ Green his stats. I don't know about him supporting two startable fantasy.
Well, him and Bernard. I mean, look, Eifert is not going to be the second option there. He's going to be the third.
Although Marvin Jones is hurt now.
Yeah, well, but he'll be the third option, I think, probably at best. Where in Minnesota, I think you can make a case for Rudolph being the second guy, the second target there in that offense.
Yeah.
So now 96 overall for Eifert. I don't know. What do you feel about that? I mean, it seems pretty low, but when you're talking that tier of tight ends, it might be too high, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds low, but I'm looking at ADP right now. Look at these running backs going behind him. You got Devontae Freeman, Bernard Pierce, Terrence West. I would take all these guys over him. Absolutely.
Yeah, I probably would. So, all right. So as far, I think we determined with Thomas. Well, let's just play a quick game. So with Thomas, for this year, are you buying or selling?
Julius?
Yeah, in a dynasty league.
Oh, I'm selling. I sold him. I literally sold him for in March for DeAndre Hopkins and a second-round pick.
All right. Okay, so look, straight from the horse's mouth. You're selling. So, all right. So a guy like Eifert, are you buying or selling him?
I'd hold on Eifert. I don't think anyone's super high on him at the moment, and he has the talent to flash. So I'd hold on him for now.
Yeah, I think ranking aside, we don't know what he can be yet. Quite honestly.
Price aside, if you have him on your team, I would hold.
Right. All right. Any other random observations, Joey, or maybe guys that popped into your head that you would buy or sell that you feel the listeners need to know about?
Let's see. My off-season binkies. I love Lance Dunbar in Dallas. I think you look at the fact that Dallas held 4 players out of their first preseason game. It was Murray, Romo, is Orlando Scandrick the lineman, and Dunbar, 4 guys who they don't want getting nicked up. I think that's a clear indication right there that you have a big role in store for Dunbar. You look at what Joyke Bell did under Scott Linehan last year in Detroit as the second back. He caught 57 balls. I think in PPR leagues he's going to have standalone flex value.
Yeah. No, look, I don't understand people's hatred of the Cowboys, because I live in Dallas, and even people here will not draft Tony Romo or Des Bryant, and I don't understand. I mean, that offense is prolific. Yeah. It's prolific. I mean,
and it's about to get more prolific with Linehan.
Right. So if you thought they passed a lot last year, watch out, because they're probably going to pass it even more if that was possible. So. Yeah, I don't get all the Cowboy hating. I think anyone on Dallas, no matter what offensive position, I think is going to be solid. Yeah. Terrence Williams, Gavin Escobar, you name it, and I'm probably buying on that point.
I'm on Escobar too.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think you can go wrong with any of those guys. I really don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we covered a lot of ground, a lot of selling, I think, on our part probably. But hey, that's okay. That's the point of Dynasty is to sell at the right time. So.
Yep.
All right, so that concludes this edition of the Fantasy Slant, powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings. Don't forget to download the August update to the Pro Football Focus Draft Guide, out now. And yeah, you can see articles about Dynasty and other stuff from me and Joey at profootballfocus.com. Joey, any last words for the folks?
Don't draft Cordell Patterson.
Words to live by. So, all right, until next time, everyone.